This wasn't just a war of trenches and artillery. World War I was also a financial war, fought in gold reserves, bond markets, and the secret offices of financiers. Soldiers paid in blood, but bankers and governments were calculating balance sheets. What they did not only determined who won, but also rewired the global financial system in ways that still affect you today. If you think war is just about armies, think again. The First World War proved that money is a weapon and one of the deadliest ever invented. In 1914, Europe was already a powder keg. But beneath all the speeches about honor and empire, there was a financial reality. War on this scale was impossible without unimaginable sums of money. And here's the brutal truth. When leaders chose war, they also chose debt. At the start, most governments believed it would be quick, over by Christmas. They thought they could pay for it, the old-fashioned way with gold and limited borrowing. Within weeks, that illusion collapsed. In the summer of 1914, Europe's financial system revolved around the gold standard. Nations promised their paper money could be exchanged for actual gold. But gold reserves were finite. You couldn't just print endlessly without losing trust. Britain, France, and Germany all had respectable reserves. But as war costs skyrocketed, the math became merciless. The gold would not last, so, one by one, the major powers quietly abandoned the gold standard. Money was now a promise backed by nothing more than faith in the state. This moment was one of the most important financial shifts in modern history. It showed how fragile the real wealth of nations actually was. Money and power were now unshackled from metal, driven by printing presses and persuasion. And once governments tasted that freedom, they never went back. The financial war began in earnest. Germany, blockaded by the Royal Navy, turned to domestic borrowing. Berlin launched massive bond drives, urging citizens to pour their savings into war loans. They raised over 100 billion marks. This was a pyramid built on hope. When defeat came, those bonds were worthless, and millions of Germans saw their life savings wiped out. Economic history always leaves scars. Britain, by contrast, had a huge advantage. London was the world's financial hub, but soon it also had to tap into global credit, turning to the United States. In 1914, America was officially neutral, but its bankers smelled opportunity. Firms like J.P. Morgan and Co. became the financial lifeline for Britain and France, arranging vast loans. This wasn't charity, it was power. America emerged from the war, transformed from a debtor to a creditor, from a financial follower to a global leader. If you wonder how the 20th century became the American century, this is where it begins, not on battlefields, but in ledgers. Russia's financial war was a disaster. Its banking system was fragile, and it borrowed heavily from its allies. As defeats piled up and inflation soared, faith in the ruble collapsed. By 1917, the Russian economy was in ruins. The collapse of the Tsarist regime wasn't just about ideology, it was about a financial system stretched past its breaking point. By the end of the war, the Allied powers had spent over $140 billion. The result was mountains of debt and the destruction of the old financial order. The gold standard was shattered. Inflation ripped through economies. Ordinary people workers, savers, small investors were the ones who paid. The wealthy elites, meanwhile, often protected themselves by shifting assets abroad. The lesson was brutal. In a financial war, the small saver bleeds first. And here is the connection that matters for you today. World War I was the moment governments learned they could finance the unimaginable by detaching money from reality. They discovered they could suspend gold, print endlessly, and issue bonds to their own citizens. Sound familiar? Because the playbook has never disappeared. Every modern crisis, from the Great Depression to the financial crash of 2008, carries echoes of 1914. When the guns fell silent, the United States held the world's largest gold reserves. Europe was drowning in debt. To pay their own citizens who bought war bonds, Britain and France demanded astronomical reparations from Germany, but it was a fantasy. Germany simply could not pay. Every attempt to do so destabilized its economy further. The hyperinflation of 1923, when Germans carted wheelbarrows of worthless money just to buy bread, was the direct consequence of a financial system pushed to the edge. Meanwhile, the United States began pouring money back into Europe, lending to Germany so it could pay reparations to Britain, and France, who could then pay back their debts to America. It was a financial merry-go-round that looked stable, but was built on circular logic. When the Great Depression hit, the entire structure collapsed. So, when central banks promise that inflation is temporary, when governments expand debt ceilings year after year, when new money is conjured digitally. Remember 1914. The pattern of borrowing against the future and printing to cover the present is more than a century old. The hidden financial battle of World War I isn't a relic. It is the foundation of the present. The lesson is harsh but necessary. Money, once untethered from reality, becomes a tool of manipulation. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it does rhyme. The financial playbook written in 1914 has been used again and again. The outcome is always the same. Those in power protect themselves, and those without knowledge are sacrificed. Never assume money is real just because it's printed, and never assume the system is stable just because authorities say so. The truth is hidden in the balance sheets, and history is the only teacher that doesn't lie. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.